So Volvo builds the safest cars on the planet, right? I mean, you think of Volvo, and you just picture this impenetrable steel cage.
Oh, absolutely. They literally invented the three-point seatbelt.
Right, and then they just gave the patent away for free because, human life was that important to them.
It's a brand built entirely on the concept of safety and security.
Exactly. So here's the question we're starting with today for you, the listener. How did 17,000 Volvo employees have their highly sensitive personal data exposed to the open internet?
Without a single hacker ever actually breaking into a Volvo computer.
Right. Not one. It's wild. It sounds like a riddle.
It does, but it's really the defining architectural flaw of our modern global economy. I mean, we still think about security like it's a medieval castle.
Like you build the thick walls, pull up the drawbridge, and you're good.
Yeah, you assume the people inside are safe, but that model is completely dead.
Welcome to the Deep Dives. We're spending our time today unpacking this massive, genuinely fascinating intelligence briefing. It's focused on a collaboration between Zscaler,
which is a global titan in cloud security.
right, and Cypher, which is the cybersecurity division of Prosegur.
And if Prosegur sounds familiar to you, they're the legendary physical security firm. Armored trucks, heavily armed guards, bank vaults.
Yeah, so our mission today is to look at this terrifying, completely invisible intersection where digital failures now translate into physical catastrophes.
Because the stakes, they've escalated way beyond just, a stolen credit card number or a defaced website.
Way beyond.
We're looking at this hyper-accelerated market where the very concept of a perimeter has just dissolved. The people defending our critical infrastructure hospitals, power grids, they're essentially being asked to build an airplane while they're already flying it.
At supersonic speeds.
Exactly.
And what's crazy is how the attackers figured out they don't even need to shoot the airplane out of the sky.
No, they don't.
They just mess with the catering company that puts the food on the plane. Which brings us right back to Volvo. Because this wasn't a breach of their mainframes.
Not at all. I mean, the attackers didn't waste their time trying to crack Volvo's primary enterprise defenses.
Because those are probably state-of-the-art.
Completely. Instead, they looked at Volvo's supply chain and they found this company called the SafePay Group.
Okay, SafePay. And they're a third-party vendor.
Right. They handle human resources and labor benefits processes.
So if I'm a Volvo employee, I need to log into some portal to check my retirement fund or, my health care. And that portal isn't actually built by Volvo.
Right. It's outsourced to SafePay. In the modern corporate structure, massive enterprises basically outsource almost everything that isn't their core competency.
That makes sense.
But to make that outsourcing work, you have to grant that third-party vendor access to your internal data.
Obviously. SafePay needed the names, the ID numbers, the financial details.
Everything. For all 17,000 of those employees just to do their job.
So the hackers just hit SafePay with ransomware.
Yeah.
And because Volvo trusted SafePay, Volvo's people became collateral damage. The analogy that hit me when I was reading the briefing was, it's like spending $10 million building this impenetrable fortress.
Biometric scanners, snipers on the roof.
Yeah, motion sensors in the yard. But then you take your spare key to the front door, walk down the street to your accountant's office, and just hide it under their flimsy $2 welcome mat.
That is a devastatingly accurate way to picture it.
Yeah,
and you have to remember, the attackers are highly rational economic actors.
They're doing the math.
They calculate the ROI. Why spend 8 months and millions of dollars developing custom malware to bypass the biometrics on the fortress?
You can just flip over the accountant's welcome mat.
Exactly. Your security posture is fundamentally only as strong as the smallest, least funded, most vulnerable vendor in your entire supply chain.
I do want to push back on that a little bit, though.
Go for it.
Because if I'm a global conglomerate, I can't possibly audit the IT department of every single company that sells me paper clips or processes my dental benefits. It feels like an unsolvable problem.
It is a massive challenge.
Like, trust is the lubricant of business.
Yeah.
If you take away digital trust, the whole machine just grinds to a halt.
And that is the exact tension the industry is wrestling with right now. I mean, you cannot eliminate third-party vendors, but you have to radically shift how you manage the trust you extend to them.
How so?
Well, historically, once a vendor was connected to your network, they had broad access. It was this default state of trust. What the intelligence briefing highlights and what firms like Zscaler are pioneering is the absolute death of default trust.
Zero trust.
Exactly. The zero trust architecture.
Meaning, I don't care if you have the spare key, I'm still going to check your DNA before I let you open the door.
Right. You verify every single transaction, every single time, regardless of who is asking. But, data theft, like what happened with the Volvo employees, is just one weapon in the arsenal. And honestly, it might not even be the most disruptive one.
You're talking about the Grupo Godot incident.
Yes.
This one fascinated me because of the sheer economic vandalism of it.
Mm-hmm.
So for context, Grupo Godot is a massive media conglomerate in Spain.
Very influential.
Yeah, they run La Vanguardia, Mundo Deportivo, RAC1, major news and sports sites. And the briefing details how they were hit by a DDoS attack.
Yeah, distributed denial of service. Let's break down the mechanics of that because the timing and the execution here are incredibly specific.
It was a Thursday morning, exactly 6 over a.m.
A targeted precision strike.
Right. And what's crazy is when you hear cyber attack, you naturally assume they stole something.
Of course.
But they didn't take any data. No credit cards, no passwords, no investigative files. They just took the websites offline. Just blank screens.
Yeah.
So if they aren't stealing data to sell on the dark web, what is the point? Why burn the resources to even do this?
Well, to understand the motive, you really have to understand the mechanism. A DDoS attack is essentially a massive coordinated traffic jam.
Okay.
The attackers use what's called a botnet, which is a network of thousands, sometimes millions of compromised devices.
Like infected laptops.
Laptops, sure. But nowadays, we're talking about unsecured smart refrigerators, internet-connected security cameras. They command all of these devices to try and load the Grupo Godot websites at the exact same millisecond.
Wow. So the servers are designed to handle, say, 100,000 people reading the morning news.
Right.
But suddenly, 3 million refrigerators are trying to load the homepage simultaneously, and the server just collapses under the weight.
It completely buckles. Legitimate users just get a timeout error. Now, look at the timing again. 6:00 a.m. on a Thursday.
The peak window.
The absolute peak window for morning news consumption. People are waking up, checking headlines, looking at the football scores from the night before. Mm-hmm. By taking the sites down at this specific moment, the attackers aren't stealing data, they are vaporizing revenue.
Because if the site won't load, the ads won't load.
Digital media relies entirely on programmatic advertising, right? It pays by the impression. If you lose your peak morning traffic window, you have permanently lost that revenue. You can't get it back later in the day.
It's just gone.
Exactly. But even beyond the immediate financial hemorrhage, there is the reputational damage. In an information economy, a news publisher's primary currency is reliability.
So if the public can't access your platform during a breaking news event or just their normal morning routine, your credibility takes a hit.
It makes you look weak.
It really does.
And it highlights a massive vulnerability in how we define critical infrastructure today.
Oh, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, we used to think of critical infrastructure as just power plants, water treatment facilities, railways.
Bridges.
Right. But in a fully digital society, communication networks and media conglomerates are critical infrastructure. Disrupting them creates confusion, economic loss, and just a pervasive sense of insecurity in the public.
Okay, so you have attackers leveraging third-party vendors to steal data, like with Volvo. And you have botnets vaporizing ad revenue through brute force.
Correct.
And if you are the company sitting in the middle of this crossfire, it turns out the hackers aren't actually your only problem. Because then the government walks in.
Oh, yes. The regulatory landscape has dramatically shifted from just issuing guidelines to issuing punitive fines.
The SATSI's fine. This was wild to read.
Perfect example.
So SATSI's a nursing union. They hold the data for almost 200,000 healthcare professionals. We are talking high-level, highly sensitive stuff here.
Very sensitive.
And government ID cards, dates of birth, personal contact information, employment histories. And they suffered a massive data breach.
Absolute gold mine for malicious actors.
Exactly. But the Spanish Data Protection Agency, the AEPD, they didn't just step in and help them recover. They investigated, and then they slapped the union with a fine of nearly 10,000 euros. Now, I read that, and my initial reaction was, honestly, empathy for the union. I mean, they were the victims of a crime.
It's a common reaction.
A cyber criminal broke into their house, so to speak, and the government fined them for getting robbed. It feels a lot like victim blaming.
I understand that reaction completely, and it's something the industry debates a lot. But you have to look at the legal and ethical philosophy underpinning that fine.
Okay, walk me through it.
The regulatory bodies, especially under frameworks like GDPR in Europe, They do not view the enterprise merely as a victim. They view the enterprise as a custodian.
A custodian of the citizen's digital life.
Exactly. When 200,000 nurses hand over their scanned ID cards, they are placing a massive amount of trust in that organization to protect them.
Right.
The AEPD's investigation didn't find them simply because a bad actor targeted them. They find them because the union failed to implement proactive, adequate security measures to prevent a known type of attack like ransomware from succeeding.
So they left the window open.
Essentially, yes. The agency's message is unequivocal here. Negligence in the digital realm is no longer just an IT mistake. It is a legally punishable offense.
Because the blast radius is so huge, I was trying to map out what actually happens when 200,000 scanned IDs hit the dark web.
It's catastrophic for the individuals.
Right. It's not just that someone might hack your email. It fuels an entire secondary economy of synthetic identity fraud.
Yes, exactly.
Criminals take a real nurse's ID, attach a fake credit score to it, take out a massive loan to buy a car, and then they just vanish.
Leaving the nurse with the fallout.
The union failed to buy a better firewall, and as a result, thousands of nurses spend the next 5 years fighting debt collectors for loans they never even took out.
That is the exact causal chain the regulators are looking at. They're trying to internalize that external cost.
Make the company feel the pain.
Right. For decades, companies could underinvest in cybersecurity because if a breach happened, the actual pain was felt by the consumer, not the company. The regulatory fines are designed to make the pain immediate and corporate.
So you're fighting a two-front war. Hackers trying to break your business on one side, and government regulators threatening to bankrupt you with fines on the other.
Which is precisely what is driving the massive tectonic shifts we're seeing in the business of cybersecurity itself. The defensive market is mutating in response to this dual pressure.
Mutating is a good word, actually, because we are looking at the era of mega acquisitions, and the numbers here are just staggering.
They really are.
I was staring at the briefing notes, and it casually mentions that Palo Alto Networks, a major cybersecurity player, has been involved in acquisitions, with the broader digital identity and cyberspace seeing deals valued at $25 billion.
The whole new scale.
Let me just pause on that number for you.
Yeah.
$25 billion. I remember a time when Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion and the business world lost its collective mind.
Oh, yeah. It was front page news for weeks.
Now, a cybersecurity buyout hits $25 billion, and it's just, a headline on a Tuesday.
Well, it is a reflection of sheer necessity. The velocity of the threat landscape has completely outpaced traditional corporate research and development.
Explain that, though. Because why can't a massive company with billions of dollars just hire smart engineers to build a better defense?
Because time is a luxury they no longer have. If you decide to build a new defensive capability against, let's say, a novel AI-driven attack vector, it might take your engineering team 3 years to architect, test, and deploy that software.
And in cyber time, 3 years is a century.
Exactly. In 3 years, the attackers have iterated their malware 1,000 times over. The specific problem you originally set out to solve no longer exists, and a new, much worse problem has taken its place.
So instead of building, these tech giants buy.
Exactly. They find a small, agile startup that has already solved the specific problem, and they just acquire them, absorbing their technology into the larger platform.
They are buying speed. They're buying the puzzle pieces they're missing.
Yeah. Yes. And the two specific domains that are commanding these astronomical premiums right now are digital identity and AI agentic threats.
Let's break those down.
Sure. As we discussed with the Volvo scenario, the traditional network perimeter is gone. You cannot build a wall around a supply chain. Therefore, the new perimeter is identity.
I want to make sure I understand this fully. When you say the perimeter is identity, you mean the security check isn't, are you inside the physical office building?
Right.
The security check is, are you actually Sarah from accounting, and are you on your approved work laptop?
Exactly that. Identity protection is about authenticating the user, the device, and the context of the request continuously.
Not just once at login.
Right. The other massive driver of these acquisitions is defending against agentic AI.
I'm so glad you brought that up because the briefing throws around the phrase agentic AI.
Yeah.
And I think people hear that and they just picture the Terminator.
Skynet, yeah.
Right. How is agentic AI actually different from the malware we've been fighting for the last 20 years?
So, traditional malware is essentially a script. It's a rigid set of instructions. It breaks into a system, and it runs down a checklist. Find the data, encrypt the data, display the ransom note.
Very linear.
Very linear. If it encounters an unexpected obstacle, like a brand new firewall rule, it often just fails. It doesn't know what to do next.
It just hits a wall and stops.
Exactly. Agentic AI, however, possesses autonomy.
Meaning it can make decisions.
Yes. Think of a traditional malware as a runaway train on a set track. Agentic AI is a burglar walking through your house.
Oh, that's a creepy analogy.
If the burglar finds a locked door, they don't just freeze and give up. They look for a window. They check the air conditioning vent.
They adapt.
Agentic AI can observe its environment, recognize the defensive measures you've put up, and dynamically rewrite its own code to evade detection.
Oh.
Defending against a threat that adapts in real time requires incredibly sophisticated AI-driven countermeasures on the defense side. And buying the startups that possess those countermeasures is exactly why we see $25 billion valuations.
Okay, so you have these massive corporations eating up all the smaller innovators trying to build the ultimate all-seeing, all-knowing security platform.
Consolidating the market.
Right. But the intelligence briefing contains a really stark warning from the leadership at Cypher about this exact trend. They call it the danger of vendor lock-in.
It is one of the most hotly debated strategic issues in enterprise IT right now.
I bet.
The market, heavily influenced by investment funds and private equity, mind you, is pushing companies to consolidate. They want you to buy your firewall, your identity management, your cloud security, and your endpoint protection, all from one single massive vendor.
I mean, I can see the appeal of that, honestly. If I'm a chief information security officer managing 50 different software vendors, sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It's exhausting.
If one giant company offers me a single dashboard, a single interface, and a single monthly bill, why wouldn't I take that? It's convenient.
It is incredibly convenient. But from a purely defensive standpoint, Cypher argues that it is structurally reckless.
Strong word.
It violates a foundational principle of cybersecurity known as defense in depth.
Okay, explain defense in depth for us.
Defense in depth is the idea that no single security measure is flawless. Therefore, you layer different technologies, ideally from different manufacturers.
Okay.
Let's say an attacker discovers a zero-day vulnerability in your firewall.
And a 0 day means it's a flaw in the code that the manufacturer literally has 0 days to fix because the hackers found it first. It's a completely open window.
Precisely. So the attacker slips through the firewall because of that 0 day. But if you have defense in depth, they still have to face an intrusion detection system built by a completely different company, using completely different underlying code and logic.
So the second layer catches what the first layer missed.
Exactly.
But if I bought into the vendor lock-in...
If you bought the all-in-one platform, and a 0 day is discovered in that vendor's core architecture, every single layer of your defense collapses simultaneously. You suffer a total catastrophic blackout. You have taken a distributed risk and centralized it into a single point of failure for your entire global enterprise.
It's like putting all your money into one bank and then just trusting that the bank will never, ever get robbed.
Yes. And Cypher's warning is that in the pursuit of corporate synergy and simplified billing, we are artificially elevating the systemic fragility of the internet.
And the briefing takes this concept of centralized risk and scales it way up to a geopolitical level. Because this isn't just about a company losing data anymore. It's about nations losing sovereignty.
Digital sovereignty. This is the macro-level consequence of market consolidation.
The sources mention trade wars, armed conflicts, and state-sponsored hacker groups actively probing critical infrastructure. And it poses a really uncomfortable question.
It does.
If you are a European nation and your entire banking sector, your healthcare systems, and your government communications all run on security platforms built, hosted, and controlled by 3 massive tech companies headquartered in California or Beijing, are you actually a sovereign nation?
It is the geopolitical anxiety of our era. I mean, physical borders mean very little if the digital infrastructure that underpins your society can be throttled, surveilled, or switched off by a foreign entity.
Even an allied one.
Exactly, because even if that entity is currently an ally, geopolitical winds shift.
Right.
The intelligence briefing underscores why regions like Europe are waking up to the reality that they must cultivate indigenous, independent technological capabilities. You cannot be an independent actor on the world stage if another nation holds the root access to your economy.
Okay, I want to pivot here.
Yeah.
We've talked about the sophisticated threats, the agentic AI, the supply chain attacks. We've talked about the massive platforms trying to stop them.
Right.
But software doesn't run itself. You need human beings. You need analysts looking at the screens, hunting the threats, configuring the defenses.
The human element.
And the briefing exposes a massive, glaring vulnerability in the human element of this equation.
The talent crisis.
Yeah.
We have built a 21st century technological infrastructure, and we're trying to defend it with a workforce model that hasn't fundamentally evolved since the 1990s.
There is an analogy in the sources that I absolutely loved because it captures the absurdity of this situation so well. The self-taught guitarist.
Ah, yes. It is a very revealing metaphor for the culture of the industry.
The idea is that historically, cybersecurity has been treated more like a dark art or a raw talent than a rigorous engineering discipline.
Completely.
The industry standard was basically, if you are a brilliant self-taught hacker who learned to code in your basement, you're a savant who can shred on the guitar, but you can't read a single note of formal sheet music, you would absolutely get the job. Your raw talent was all that mattered.
And we really must acknowledge that in the early days of the internet, that culture was necessary.
It was.
It was a wild frontier. You needed mavericks and rule breakers to understand how the systems could be exploited. But the briefing draws a sharp contrast between that hacker culture and the institutional rigor of Prosegur's physical security background.
This was the light bulb moment for me. Think about a physical security guard. A person in a uniform standing outside a corporate bank lobby in Madrid.
Okay.
To legally do that job, they need official accreditation from the Spanish Ministry of the Interior. They had to pass standardized background checks, undergo specific physical and legal training, and operate under a rigid, universally understood rulebook.
Yes. The state mandates a minimum standard of competence and accountability just to protect a physical lobby.
Right. But then you look at the digital realm.
Right.
The individual sitting in a dark room actively guarding the servers that hold the medical records of millions of citizens, or the operational controls of a municipal water supply. What is their government-mandated accreditation?
There generally isn't one.
It's madness.
It's a fragmented mosaic of private certifications, university degrees of varying quality, and completely informal experience. There is no standardized, universal rule book for who is qualified to wield the immense power of a senior cybersecurity analyst.
The person guarding the glass door has more regulatory oversight than the person guarding the digital vault.
And Cypher's leadership argues that this ad hoc, Wild West approach simply cannot scale. We cannot defend global critical infrastructure relying solely on self-taught savants.
We need professionals.
The industry desperately needs professionalization, standardization, and a clear, rigorous pathway for talent development. But, the problem isn't just standardizing the entry-level analysts. The governance crisis extends all the way up to the executive boardroom.
Right. It's about the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer.
The role of the CISO is undergoing a painful but very necessary evolution.
How so?
Well, for decades, the CISO was essentially viewed as a glorified IT manager. They were the person you called when the email server crashed or when you needed to enforce password rotations.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Exactly. They were kept in the basement, both literally and metaphorically.
And the briefing is very clear that keeping the CISO in the basement is a recipe for disaster in the modern threat landscape. They need to be a board-level executive.
Absolutely.
But it's more than just giving them a fancy title and a seat at the table. It's about giving them veto power.
True. Institutional authority.
Let me frame it this way, because the comparison to the legal department made it click for me.
Okay.
If a company is gearing up for a massive, multi-million-dollar product launch, and the chief legal officer walks into the boardroom and says, "Stop. I've reviewed the contracts. If we launch this product tomorrow, we are violating international law and we will be sued out of existence." What happens?
The CEO stops the launch. Period.
Right. Nobody questions it. Legal has an absolute veto because the risk is existential.
But historically, if a CISO walks into that exact same boardroom and says, "Stop, I've reviewed the code, this product is incredibly insecure, if we launch it tomorrow, we will be breached, customer data will be stolen, and our reputation will be destroyed." What usually happens?
They get yelled at.
They face immense, often insurmountable pushback. The sales team argues that they need to hit their quarterly revenue targets.
Marketing team says the ad buy is already locked in.
Right. The CEO looks at the CISO as a roadblock, an impediment to business speed.
You are holding up the money, just fix the security later.
Exactly. Accept the risk. In many organizations, unless the CISO has that explicit board-mandated authority to pull the emergency brake, highly vulnerable products and systems are shoved out the door.
Aye.
The business prioritizes speed over safety, usually because the executives don't actually comprehend the technical magnitude of the risk they're accepting. The evolution required is structural. When the CISO says no, it must carry the exact same definitive, unquestionable weight as when the chief legal officer says no.
Okay, that makes perfect sense in the sterile environment of a corporate boardroom. The CSO says stop, you stop. But I want to take that theoretical authority and drop it into the messy, loud, dangerous real world.
Let's do it.
Because this tension between business operations and cybersecurity gets completely flipped upside down when we start talking about the physical-digital convergence.
Section 4 of our analysis. This is where the digital code directly dictates physical reality. We are talking about industrial environments, the Internet of Things, IoT, and programmable logic controllers, or PLCs.
Right. And the briefing outlines this intense, almost philosophical conflict between the IT mindset and the industrial engineering mindset. It's a clash between the definition of security and the definition of safety.
Those two terms are used interchangeably in casual conversation, but on a factory floor, they mean entirely different, often opposing things.
Let's use this scenario from the sources because it's brilliant. Paint the picture for us. We are standing in a massive manufacturing plant.
Okay, imagine a highly automated facility. Loud machinery, conveyor belts, automated vehicles moving around. Mounted on a pillar near a busy intersection is a specialized industrial camera.
Okay, got it.
This camera is running advanced visual recognition software. Its sole purpose is to monitor the pathway. If a human worker accidentally steps out of the designated walking lane and into the path of a 2-ton automated forklift, that camera instantly sends a signal to a PLC, a controller, which slams the brakes on the forklift.
Okay, so that camera is a safety device. Its job is to protect human life and preserve physical integrity.
Correct. Now, introduce the IT security analyst into the picture. The analyst is running routine scans from their office and flags that specific camera. They realize the firmware running on the camera is 3 years old and has a known documented vulnerability. A hacker could potentially access it. From an IT security perspective, the protocol is binary and immediate. Patch the software, update the device to close the vulnerability.
Right, just push an update like my phone does overnight. It seems obvious. But the factory manager says no.
The factory manager will unequivocally forbid it, and they are absolutely right to do so. The friction of patching in an operational technology or OT environment is immense.
Explain the friction. Why can't I just update the camera?
Well, first, applying an unauthorized software patch to a highly specialized piece of industrial equipment might instantly void the manufacturer's warranty. If you alter the code and the camera fails a month later, the manufacturer holds zero liability.
That's a financial nightmare.
Second, and far more critical, is the issue of network latency.
Okay, latency. We experience that when a video buffers or a web page takes an extra second to load. Annoying, but not deadly.
In an IT environment, a delay of 200 milliseconds is a slight annoyance. In an OT environment, 200 milliseconds is catastrophic.
Because things are moving.
Exactly. If the new security patch adds extra processing time to the camera's visual recognition loop, and a worker steps in front of that forklift, a fraction of a second is the difference between an emergency stop and a fatal accident. You simply cannot introduce unknown variables into a closed safety loop.
Wow. So patching the camera to make it digitally secure could literally make it physically lethal.
And thirdly, applying the patch usually requires rebooting the device or taking the network segment offline. In a continuous manufacturing process, shutting down the line for even 10 minutes to reboot systems can cost the company tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost production.
So you have an impossible puzzle. The IT guy knows the camera is an open window for hackers. The engineering guy knows that touching the camera could kill someone or cost $1 million. So what do? Do they just leave it vulnerable and pray?
Historically, yes. They relied on security by obscurity, hoping the hackers just wouldn't find it, but that is no longer viable.
Right.
This impossible puzzle is where we see the introduction of a profound technical innovation from the Zscaler and Cypher alliance, the Z-SIM.
The Z-SIM. This is a specialized SIM card for IoT devices. Help me understand the mechanics of this, because my initial thought was, oh, it's just giving the camera vocal cords so it can talk to the network better. But that's not right, is it?
No, the vocal cord metaphor implies we are just changing how it speaks. A better way to conceptualize the Z-SIM is an armored tunnel, or perhaps a highly vetted, secure courier service. It operates on the principle of a compensatory control.
Meaning, if I can't fix the broken lock on the camera itself, I have to change the environment around the camera.
Precisely. You insert this specialized zSIM card into the connectivity module of the factory camera or the PLC. You don't touch the device's fragile internal software. You don't update its operating system.
Warranty intact, latency unchanged.
Exactly. The zSIM takes over the communication layer. First, it provides cryptographically secure authentication. It proves to the network, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this device is the authorized safety camera and not a hacker spoofing its signal.
Okay, that's step one.
Second, it heavily encrypts all telemetry data leaving the device.
But here's the magic part, based on the briefing. Where does that encrypted data go?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't just go onto the factory Wi-Fi, right?
It bypasses the local, potentially vulnerable network completely, and it completely bypasses the public internet. The zSIM routes the device's connection directly into Zscaler's proprietary global infrastructure.
Which is massive.
A massive web of over 160 data centers worldwide.
Wait, so the camera is physically sitting in a factory in Germany, but digitally it's sitting inside a cloud data center.
Yes. All the heavy lifting of security, the threat filtering, the access policies, the malware scanning happens up in the cloud. By the time the communication reaches the physical factory floor, it has already been scrubbed clean.
Wow.
To the outside internet, that vulnerable safety camera is effectively invisible. It cannot be pinged, it cannot be scanned, it cannot be attacked.
You just put the fragile object inside a digital vault. It doesn't matter that the camera software is out of date because the bad guys can't even see the camera to hack it. That is an incredibly elegant solution to the safety versus security conflict.
It is a total game changer for industrial environments, but it raises a critical economic question.
Right. Zscaler has 160 global data centers. That sounds like a solution built for Fortune 500 companies. Massive automotive plants, global shipping ports. They can afford custom SIM cards and global cloud architecture.
They absolutely can.
But what about the rest of the economy? Because going back to the very beginning of our conversation, the Volvo attack proved that the Fortune 500 company isn't the primary target. The target is the small third-party vendor.
The democratization of elite defense is perhaps the most urgent societal challenge in the cyber domain right now.
If I run a medium-sized business, let's say I own a regional logistics firm in Spain with 50 trucks, or I run a network of a dozen dental clinics, I am terrified right now.
You should be.
I have hackers trying to encrypt my patient records. I have the government threatening to fine me 10,000 euros if I fail. But I absolutely cannot afford a dedicated 24/7 security operations center. I can't afford a team of accredited analysts making six-figure salaries. Am I just doomed to be the weak link?
Left entirely to the free market, many small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, would be priced out of survival. But the landscape is being forcefully altered by impending regulation.
Oh, right.
The intelligence briefing places heavy emphasis on the NIS2 directive in Europe.
Okay, I saw NIS2 mentioned, but walk me through it. Because it sounds like just another boring bureaucratic acronym, but the implications are massive.
It is a tectonic shift in liability. NIS2 is a European Union directive designed to force a high uniform baseline of cybersecurity across critical sectors. But the genius and the terror of NIS2 is how it treats the supply chain.
A forcing function.
Yes. The government isn't going to send an auditor to inspect every single mom-and-pop dental clinic or regional trucking company.
They don't have the manpower.
Exactly. Instead, the regulation mandates that the large critical enterprises are legally responsible for the security of their supply chains. Furthermore, NIS2 introduces personal liability for senior management. If a large company is breached because they allowed an insecure vendor onto their network, the executives of that large company can be held personally accountable.
Oh, wow. So if I am the CEO of a massive European insurance conglomerate, I am suddenly terrified of my vendors.
Very much so.
I'm going to look at that small dental clinic and say, I am not risking personal liability for your bad IT. Prove to me you have enterprise-grade security, or I am terminating our contract tomorrow.
The massive enterprises become the enforcers of the regulation. This creates a sudden, overwhelming market mandate. Millions of SMEs must drastically upgrade their defensive posture immediately, or they will be economically exiled from the supply chain.
But that brings us right back to the economic paradox. You just force the small guy to buy premium security, but they still don't have the budget to hire the talent. How do they comply without going bankrupt?
This is where the service model must innovate. And the solution detailed in our sources is Cypher's XMDR platform.
XMDR, Extended Managed Detection and Response.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful. How does this actually solve the small business dilemma.
It solves the economic problem of scarce talent through radical technological amplification.
Okay.
The fundamental problem in a traditional security operations center, or SOC, is alert fatigue.
Give me a sense of what that looks like.
Imagine an analyst staring at a dashboard. Every time an employee logs in from a new location, every time a file is downloaded, every time an external IP address pings the firewall, an alert is generated. A single medium-sized network can generate tens of thousands of alerts a day.
It's just a wall of noise.
It is completely paralyzing. 99.9% of those alerts are benign false positives or routine automated traffic. But the analyst has to manually investigate enough of them to ensure they aren't missing the one genuine threat.
Which takes forever.
This limits a human analyst to maybe monitoring 1 or 2 client networks at a time. It is highly inefficient, which is exactly why it is so expensive.
So how does XMDR amplify them? How does one analyst suddenly protect 20 clients without missing the bad guy?
Through aggressive ingestion and correlation engines, the XMDR platform ingests all that raw data but doesn't show it to the human. It uses advanced algorithms to cross-reference the data. It asks, is this login attempt from a new IP address accompanied by a sudden spike in data exfiltration? No. Then auto-resolve it. Hide it.
Wow.
The platform filters out the noise so aggressively that the human analyst is only presented with highly complex, correlated anomalies that genuinely require human intuition and critical thinking.
So by stripping away all that digital drudgery, you free up the analyst's brain. And because that one human brain is now operating at, what, 20x efficiency, Cypher can lower the price point of the service.
Exactly. The economy of scale shifts. The regional logistics firm can now subscribe to a premium 24/7 detection and response service at a fraction of the cost of building it internally. It democratizes access to the exact same elite defense used by the Fortune 500.
But to achieve that level of automated filtering, to trust a machine to hide 99.9% of the alerts safely, you need an incredibly smart machine.
They do.
Which brings us to the final major piece of the defensive puzzle: artificial intelligence.
Yes. You cannot discuss modern, scalable defense without examining how AI is deployed on the battlefield.
The briefing has a phrase regarding AI that I found incredibly profound, despite sounding like an insult at first.
Yeah.
They talk about using AI for the corner of the lazy.
It is a wonderfully pragmatic way to conceptualize the role of automation.
Right. Because usually calling someone lazy implies a lack of work ethic. But here, they mean treating human attention as the ultimate, most precious, scarce resource. Do not waste a brilliant human brain on a task a machine can do.
Staring at scrolling logs of network traffic for 12 hours a shift is intellectually corrosive. It leads to burnout, and burnout leads to mistakes. Zscaler has been integrating AI, both generative and agentic models, into their systems since 2018, long before the current hype cycle. Their entire philosophy is to delegate the drudgery.
So while the agentic AI on the offensive side is trying to act like a smart burglar, the agentic AI on the defensive side is acting like an autonomous guard dog, patrolling the perimeter and dealing with the low-level threats without having to wake up the human master.
That is an excellent analogy. The machine handles the volume, the human handles the nuance. But the effectiveness of this AI isn't just about the algorithms. It's about the data it feeds on. And that requires a specific geographic philosophy.
The glocal approach.
Yeah.
Global scale, local action.
I'll admit, when I first read glocal, my eyes glazed over. It sounds like a marketing buzzword invented in a corporate retreat.
It does sound like jargon, but it's crucial.
But the briefing makes a really compelling case for why this specific structure is mandatory.
It is the operational synthesis of Zscaler's raw power and Cypher's nuanced execution.
So break the two halves down for us. Why do I need a global system?
You need global scale because threats operate globally. Zscaler processes hundreds of billions of transactions a day across its 160 data centers.
If a novel piece of ransomware is deployed against a financial institution in Tokyo at 2:00 p.m., Zscaler's AI analyzes it, extracts the threat signature, and instantly updates the defensive posture for every single client worldwide.
So if I'm a hospital in Madrid, I am inoculated against the Tokyo virus before it even crosses the hemisphere. The global visibility is the early warning radar.
Precisely. But radar alone doesn't win the battle. You need the local aspect. You need human execution that understands the specific context of the environment.
The sources outline Cypher's journey here.
Right.
They didn't just build a local team. They actively went to the United States to compete in what they call the Champions League of
To
cybersecurity.
test themselves.
Right. They wanted to test themselves against the most advanced, aggressive threat actors in the world.
Well,
And once they sharpened those skills, they expanded their localized operations deeply into markets like Brazil, Portugal, and Spain. But let me challenge this. If the AI is so smart and the global network is so fast, why can't I just outsource my entire security apparatus to a massive, faceless hub in another country? Why does the local team matter?
because cybersecurity is ultimately about protecting business logic, and business logic is deeply cultural and highly localized.
How so?
Well, an analyst sitting in a mega center on another continent might see an alert triggered by your logistics firm in Spain, but they don't know the Spanish regulatory environment. They don't know the specific operational quirks of your local supply chain.
No, I think I get it. The global AI sees a massive spike in database access at 3:00 p.m. and flags it as a massive data exfiltration attack. It's ready to shut down the network.
But the local Spanish analyst looks at it and says, no, wait, that's just the shift change after siesta. That's normal behavior for this specific region.
Exactly. Context is the difference between stopping a hacker and accidentally shutting down your own business.
Glocal means you leverage the raw, massive computing power of a global sensor network. But the final tactical decisions are made by a nuanced, culturally aware, local response team that understands your specific reality.
Which brings us to a really stark conclusion about the entire industry. The era of commodity security is dead.
The concept of the security box is entirely obsolete.
The idea that you could just go down to the IT store, buy a shiny silver firewall, plug it into the rack, turn it on, and say, great, we're secure for the next 5 years, that world doesn't exist anymore.
It cannot exist. Because as we have explored today, the threats are dynamic and the environments are wildly diverse. You cannot buy an off-the-shelf product that understands the difference between protecting the data privacy of a nursing union and protecting the physical safety of an automated forklift.
It's impossible.
Cybersecurity is no longer a product you purchase. It is a continuous living service that must be deeply integrated into the specific vertical of the business.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started by looking at how the very concept of the fortress has failed, how the Volvo supply chain attack proves that trust is a massive vulnerability.
A huge one.
We looked at the sheer economic vandalism of DDoS attacks against media giants like Grupo Godot, and how regulators are now punishing victims like Satsi for failing to lock the doors.
We navigated the $25 billion chessboard of tech acquisitions, too.
Right. Debating the convenience of vendor lock-in versus the geopolitical necessity of digital sovereignty and defense in depth.
And the talent crisis.
Yes, the desperate need to professionalize the talent pool, moving past the self-taught hacker and demanding true legal-level authority for the CISO.
The veto power.
And then we dug into the actual mechanics of the defense, the brilliance of the ZSIM, creating an invisible cloud vault around unpackable factory equipment to prevent physical disasters.
We explored how NIS2 is going to force a massive upgrade across the supply chain.
And how platforms like XMDR use the corner of the lazy agentic AI to amplify human analysts so small businesses can afford to survive.
And finally, the necessity of the glocal approach. Global radar, local context.
If you take one thing away from this deep dive, it should be this. Your digital hygiene is no longer just about protecting your credit card or your emails. The perimeter is gone. The code running in the background of your business is the scaffolding of the modern world. Your security practices protect the physical safety of your colleagues, the survival of the vendors you rely on, and the integrity of the critical infrastructure that keeps society from collapsing.
The stakes are entirely tangible now, and if we pull all these threads together, the unpatchable safety cameras, the supply chain domino effect, the regulatory mandates, it brings us to a profound, almost philosophical threshold.
What's that?
If a single compromised digital credential can stop a factory floor, blind a safety sensor, and directly threaten physical human life, at what point does cybersecurity transition from being a corporate IT issue to a matter of public health? We have spent over a century building rigorous, non-negotiable regulatory frameworks for physical safety. We mandate the chemical purity of our drinking water. We legally require seat belts in vehicles and hard hats on construction sites. We accept these mandates because the risk of failure is catastrophic physical harm.
Right.
But as our physical reality becomes entirely fused with the digital realm, the next great public safety crises will not be caused by a failing bridge or contaminated pipes. They will be caused by the invisible codes silently orchestrating our environment. When a digital vulnerability carries the exact same lethal potential as a severed brake line, managing that code becomes a fundamental public safety imperative. Are we, as a society, truly ready for that level of collective accountability?
The code is the new concrete.
Hmm.
That is a heavy, essential question to carry with you. Thank you for spending your time with us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.